I'm Dan Spindle here at KSL. We are breaking into coverage right now on the air, learning about an inbounds avalanche at Snowbird Ski Resort. That is where hundreds of people have been on Interlodge.
We are testing all of our abilities to make sure that we can talk to you in the event of an emergency. We all remember March 18th, 2020, when infamously, let's say, that GoPro shot of the inside of our studio.
This is how tall the paper tower is right now as far as the bill. Imagine getting this on your desk and then voting a couple of hours later. What in the world is in this thing? Unidentified flying objects, balloons, aerial phenomenon. President Biden addressing the nation right now to talk about our response. Let's go to the president. Can I say I was flying high yesterday?
Yeah.
First round, I picked Furman to beat Virginia, and I have people tweeting at me, wow, look at your perfect bracket, and then
What happens?
Gone.
Some of the best aerobatic performers in the world will be up in the skies above Davis County along the Wasatch Front. In fact, some are up right now. We've got an F-16 just to kind of buzzing us nonstop. It's incredible. Remember when you could make it a blockbuster night? We're going to make it a blockbuster afternoon. Come right this way. I have no idea what's on the other side of these curtains.
We've been counting this down for the better part of the last, 2-3 years? It is officially time, folks. All-Star Weekend tips off today and tomorrow. We are keeping you up to date on the fun, the logistics, how to get around, how to experience the entire weekend. We need a notary or an attorney, an official declaration of surrender. I mean, are we willing to do this? I'll do it. I'll put it down on paper and say, we've had enough.
Yeah, it's a lot. It's a lot to deal with.
We're waving the white flag, Brett.
Hey there, coming to you from atop KSL Broadcast House in what is a very sunny downtown Salt Lake City. And yes, I am sporting the shades on this National Sunglasses Day.
Big news, BYU fans. Rise and shout. This guy's sticking around, not just right here in studio. He's sticking around in Provo for a few more years. You're welcome, says Disney. Now you are just 1 week away from making more magical memories in Southern California because the restrictions to residents only, those Californians, are gone. So many Utah fans today because the Salt Lake City Olympics for 2034, it's official. The bid was successful. And I want you to just see this beautiful flame again. You talk about the forecast, Matt Johnson. The forecast is hot. Can't let the Star Wars reference go unanswered. It would be the ice world of Hoth. That's where you would be right now. You need a tauntaun to get around because even the Rebel Alliance couldn't adjust the speeders to that.
You guys are a bunch of geeks.
Right here.
The Great Salt Air. You've certainly seen what looks more like a modern knockoff palace from the Ottoman Empire, the roadside attraction of sorts, just off I-80 near Lake Point.
It is a strange place. And you go inside here and it's all this old wood.
Chris Merritt, State Historic Preservation Officer, told me step one in speaking about this strange historic structure is getting the history straight first. Because after all, this building is an imposter.
That's been festooned to look like the first two salt air resorts.
Fitting that a historian uses words that harken back to another time. Let's take a trip back to the Gilded Age of the 1890s. When a building rose from the desert soil to define a region. No, not the Salt Lake Temple, finished in 1893. That same year, leadership for the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints were excited about something less spiritual in nature. But for some, seeing the Great Salt Air for the first time must have been a religious experience.
But this was grand. This was massive architecture. And it was meant to be imposing. It was meant to be this worldwide feature.
They built it, and the people did come. For the better part of a quarter century, this massive 100-foot-tall pavilion lakefront resort hosted those looking for rest and relaxation away from the city in style. And it was easy to get here on the train from downtown, a 16-mile-long straight shot. But if you search today for any sign of the bandstand, the Midway Games, the shops selling root beer and the 10-cent dolls to the masses, the dressing rooms lining what was a spacious section of this buoyant saltwater bay,
Nothing here,
yeah.
chances are you wouldn't find anything.
But those piles that are way out there, that was Salt Air 1, where if you were swimming, it was a deck you could lay out on and rest.
I followed Chris for more than a mile onto what is now flat, long-since-dry lake bed without many notable features. But he knows just where to look.
The piles that were driven in 1892, just before construction, these are probably those original poles.
Wooden poles preserved by the salt that used to hold up the rail line over the water here. Posts that ran electric and telephone lines.
That was a steam boiler. This thing operated for 80 plus years. Wow.
even pieces of bottles and dishes that tell the story of days gone by.
Teacup handles, coffee mugs, corks from all those soda bottles. You're right underneath the big dance hall right here. The dining hall's kind of off to the side. Oh yeah, there's those are the big fragments.
Look at that design.
That's 1930s.
That's incredible.
You have a little bit of everything.
Countless hundreds of thousands showed up year after year to stand, sit, and swim in awe of this wonder of the West, through waters thought to have healing in the shallow depths.
I love it because it gives me perspective on my own place in this story.
From the pioneers to U.S. presidents who enjoyed bathing in the waters where I'm standing right now, the Great Salt Lake was a draw for more than 50 years. And perhaps if the medicinal properties of the water itself were overblown, what we know for sure looking into the future is that this great fixture of our region isn't going to fix itself.
For 50 years, people loved coming to the lake. People loved recreating out here. This is how they spent their weekend. This is how they spent their 4th of July.
The world's largest dance floor, the Sunday concerts, even the eventual roller coaster couldn't save this space from destruction, as fire gutted the great structure in the middle of the Roaring 20s. So Saltaire 2 was born with a lot of promise. But not long after it reopened to a crowd of 10,000, big changes would threaten to shutter it for good.
When the lake water goes up, everybody's happy. When lake waters go down, businesses close.
The lake water, or lack thereof, coupled with the Great Depression, followed by another World War. The writing was on the wall for years, and after limping along into the 1950s, what was once great became a relic of the past, falling into decay and eventually burning to the ground for the last time, more than 50 years ago. So how does this lost history help us save the Great Salt Lake today?
I'm not a biologist, I'm not a geologist, I'm not a water scientist, but I'm like, here's the history. Here's how we interacted with the lake. Here's its connection to all of us that we need to take into account.
Do you think we have the opportunity to adjust and fix and bring back some of the glory of the lake? Is it possible?
I think so. I think anything is possible. I'm standing in a place that celebrated the lake for 60 years. I think that's pretty neat, and it's a story that we don't tell enough of.
As for this yellow knockoff along the freeway, well, they say imitation is the greatest form of flattery. If you celebrate something, you love it. And if you love it, Chris tells me, you'll save it. Reporting from the Great Saltaire, Dan Spindle, KSL 5 News. You can talk about conserving water till the cows come home. But any conversation surrounding the drought crisis in our state starts with the people who've worked this land for generations. They know the issues, and they, more than anyone, want to address them long term. Their way of life depends on it.
What it is, it's a solution to a problem. Whether the rancher has a shortage of water problem, a shortage of acre problem.
Lee Magnuson is talking about sustainability he wants to bring to the most arid corners of Utah in the form of new technology, using hydroponic grow systems by Hydrogreen.
That's the plant time.
Lee's big brother Rod is way ahead of him.
And this requires no soil.
No soil, no fertilization.
No fertilization.
Nope.
Simply applications of some water.
The energy of the seed.
While he's not on the payroll, Rod could be an ambassador for this new method that just might change the way farmers and ranchers do business in the Beehive State and beyond, feeding their livestock not from the fields, but from these long trays, sprouting grains seemingly in no time at all.
When I seen it, I'm like, I've got to do that.
It's all about conservation, and when you think about the fraction of the water and the time versus what it would take to grow the typical grain, this red wheat went from this yesterday to this just 5 days later, and it's almost ready to go. This will become feed for livestock within hours.
And then this is all palatable, the roots, everything, they eat it all.
Rod tells me this beautiful green growth can supplement some of the nutritional needs of his 1,200 head of cattle. It doesn't replace the need for pasture grazing or trucking in hay and straw from other places, but it does cut it down, saving money and saving a lot of water.
My 80-acre pivot will use the same amount of water in 4.5 days as this building will in 365 days.
In a year.
In a year.
Consider the nearly 18,000 Utah farms. What if just 1% of those operations installed some kind of vertical farming with a year-long harvest window? Compare that to the 2 Olympic-sized swimming pools worth of water traditionally needed for each season for every acre of alfalfa. Best case scenario with Hydrogreen, a 93% drop in water use. Now imagine the entire dry Intermountain region. 141,000 farms across 121 million acres. How many swimming pools worth would that save with just a fraction installing greenhouse-style growing facilities to supplement some of the fresh forage needed to keep the animals fed?
You could put 1 unit, 10 units, 20 units.
The scale and scope of the retrofit at any given operation depends on whether or not it would work. These longtime rural Utah ranchers recognize it's not a one-size-fits-all solution. But farming into the future isn't getting any easier here.
Try to buy into farming. Try to buy into ranching. It's impossible. If you don't have the land in the family, you're not going to buy in. But
buying into a potential fix to the water and land crisis, that's a seed the Magnusons and others are willing to plant in hopes that this parched landscape gives them a shot at success for years to come. In Emery County, Dan Spindle, KSL 5 News.